Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Emily Bagshaw on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Leeds in the UK. Our second guest from Leeds. I'm trying to remember our first guest, but the name hasn't popped into my head yet. But she's a personal trainer as well as an online coach, and she's also been a competitive bodybuilder. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Emily, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Pleasure. Hello.
Uh, yeah, and I just gotta say, first of all, what is the weather like right now in Leeds? I mean, I know we're doing the time difference, so I'm calling her at about 1:15 here, and it's about 7:15 then there. But what is the weather like today?
It's rained all day.
Yep. We are having an absolute heat wave in Minnesota right now. I think it's 90 degrees right now, and then with the humidity, it's like 105. So yeah, you're not going to be wanting to go outside. That's why I'll be nice, chill, sitting inside editing podcasts all day. That'll be a good time for me. But why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this healthy and fit lifestyle?
Good question. I mean, I suppose I joined the gym when I was 16. I don't know about the US, but that's the legal age to join a gym in the UK. So I joined straight away and just I guess when I started it was more about the cardio and yeah, just the endorphins it gave me. And yeah, I carried it through into my college days. That's not the same as the US again. College is like different, isn't it? So university, I also carried it on there. And then yeah, I graduated in a subject that's completely irrelevant to fitness, but then I realized that I'd rather make a career out of training. And yeah.
Well, that's awesome, and I honestly don't even know if there's an age limit in the US for if you can go join a gym or not. I mean, I think there might be, but I think it's like super, super young or something. But yeah, I should honestly look up into the subject and then I'll post it down below if I find the answer. But one of the things that I really love to talk about on this podcast with all of my health and fitness guests is that, what you're going to see results wise is based on a lot of factors. I mean, it's based on your genetics, it's based on, how much you work out, what body parts you train. I mean, I always love to say if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, what they eat, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. I mean, just so many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started finding what worked best for your body? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what did you train for that body part? It looks amazing." What works best for them 99% of the time might not work as good for you.
I guess with my body type, so there's like three different body types that you can have anyway. You've got your naturally athletic people, you've got your naturally skinny people who will struggle to put muscle on, but they'll also not have so much problem staying skinny. And then you've got the people who gain weight really easily, but also build muscle really easily. And I kind of fall in closer into that category. So building muscle for me was not really ever that hard, to be quite honest. But I do struggle to stay lean. Um, so yeah, like it's quite easy for me to look quite chubby, let's say. So I have to be very careful with my nutrition. So that's for me, that is absolute vital for anyone who's going to the gym. You can do what you want in the gym, but if you're not eating right, you're never going to see, even if you have built lots of muscle, you're not going to see it or you're not going to get the results that you're after. So yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. That is just such a important thing. And also, I'm more of like the second thing where it's like you're just naturally lean because I'm 6'3", so putting on muscle for me was just horrible. And my lower body is absolutely shot, which kind of leads us into our next question that I love to ask because everyone always has that one body part when they get started working out that really, really takes off, that they don't have to, train as much. And then
Mm.
everyone has that one body part that just lags behind and they just have to train it into overdrive to get it to catch up. I mean, I'll give you my examples. I mean, for me, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of where, I would be lifting and loading heavy packages into trucks. I was, more of a warehouse worker. So, you either got a really nice back or you quit. That's basically the two options that you really face. But also, like I said, being 6'3", my legs and my lower body are just shot where I mean I have to train them twice a week just to get them to look like any semblance like that. I even work them. I mean, I still have friends at my gym who still like to crack the joke like, "Hey Ryan, you plan on working out your legs anytime this year?" And then I'm just like, "Oh, like I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, guys." Yeah, but so what were those body parts for you?
Okay, well, for me, legs were always easy. Like that was my issue with my last show that I did as well, bodybuilding show. Like my legs were like way musclier than everyone else on stage, and then my upper body was not so much. But yeah, I mean, there's physics behind it as well. So if you are really super tall, like you've got a lot longer muscle.
Lengthier,
So
yeah. It's
for
just so
example, a
much more
bicep, you
length.
can have a
Yeah.
really long bicep that's going to have to like get thicker. So it's just that's yeah, and I'm really really short, so that's another reason why it's like slightly easier for me. But no, to be honest, I have just made sure that I've started training upper body more and putting more emphasis on like shoulders and back training and stuff, so that they do catch up. Because there's I'm sort of almost just as capable, I suppose. If I had to say that body part that I'll never see, it's my pecs. But that's normal, I think, for most girls. Apart from if I'm really, really lean, and then it kind of looks gross, and you see like little humps here. But
Yeah. Oh no.
that's
Yeah.
only in a
That's
few weeks before a show.
yeah. Well, no, and that's one thing for me, if there's going to be one body part that I would never see, it would be calves, just because that is the one biggest genetic thing where, I mean, I'm sorry, you either have them or you don't. Some people swear that, they can train
That's
them all the
true.
time, and then they'll look nice. But I always tell them, I was like, no, that's not. I mean, I always tell people I could inject pure muscle into my calves, and they wouldn't grow an ounce. I mean, I just don't know. And then, so we had one lady who I was talking about that on the show, and she put her calf up on the table, and it was like bigger than my thighs, and I was like, okay, we're done talking here. I was like, we're done here. Like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, that is definitely the one thing that is just so genetic that I mean, that's one thing that I will personally never see. But we were talking about nutrition. What would you say is probably the biggest nutritional change that you had to make when you went on your first prep?
Um, I guess just the really simple kind of dropping the calories, and that's the easy way, obviously. Well, it's the only way that you actually are going to lose the weight, and that's what I needed to do, just lose body fat. So, yeah, there's obviously people say, you could just eat one muffin a day and you'd lose weight, and it's like all those fad diets that you see where it's like skinny coffee, and
Yep.
that's all people are having. So they're thinking, I'm losing weight here, but it's like, well, each coffee is like 300 calories, and that's all you're having. So that's blatantly it. But no, I suppose in the past, for example, I've overeaten. Like you can eat really, really healthily, but just way too much of it. And like with prep, I'd say as well, like measuring things out really helped because you can have way too much spaghetti, for example, without even realizing. And when you're told to only have 50 grams, then you'll weigh that out. And what you might not realize is that you were having 100 the whole time. Twice the amount of calories, and especially stuff like carbs that is just really like calorie dense carbs. And just that extra 10 grams can add like so many calories, and then you actually putting yourself over that kind of where your normal kind of maintenance calories would be. You're in a calorie surplus, and then you're just going to gain weight. So I suppose yeah, like helping was like weighing food out and realizing quantities and things, and then yes, you're eating healthy, but you're also not eating too much of that.
I made that exact same mistake when I was getting started because I thought that, if I ate healthy, I could eat whatever I wanted or I could eat like as much as I wanted. I was doing about, I think it was like 4,500 calories a day. But it was like all like fruits and vegetables and like healthy stuff. And I was like, and I put on like a couple pounds and I was like, how is this even a thing? But then I realized I was like, oh yeah, I still, that doesn't give me a license to eat whatever I want, as long as it's healthy stuff. So yeah, that's one thing that I do like to tell people if they ever come up and just ask for like tips and there's like, how do I do with my diet? I was like, just realize that doesn't give you a license to eat as much as you want. It just means that, you can limit to, what you can do. But probably the biggest myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast, and again, I ask this of every single health and fitness guest that I have on the podcast, is that, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram. But I always love to say, there's still so many women that have that fear where if they walk into the gym and they do one exercise that involves anything with weights, they do one push up or one pull up, they're gonna put on 50 pounds of muscle. I'll put on like 20 kilograms. Then I'll do that. I'll do the version there. But they just think that that's gonna be a thing. And I always say to that, good luck. First of all, everybody and their brother would want to I'd spend my entire life savings just to get one personal training session with you because you would have found the secret that everyone's looking for. But yeah, it's just so not true. But did you have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being a personal trainer now, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
Okay, well, in terms of having that fear, no, because I always wanted to look muscly. It was always like a thing in my head. Like I don't want to say I go to the gym. I want people to just look at me and know. Like, that's the look I was always wanting. Um, I like that look. But, in terms of people saying it to me, I suppose, well, most of the clients that come to me, they want to build muscle, and that's their goal, which is great. The ones that come and they are, like I said, like a fat loss client, and they're coming to me to, like, help with losing weight, they just sort of maybe they say, "Oh, I don't want to look all muscly," um, but I just say, "Yeah, don't worry, you absolutely won't look muscly. That's, just not how it works. It'd be great if it did. We'd all be like I'd be super muscly if that was the case, but yeah, it takes a long time to build a pound of muscle." So,
I just remember, my story with that is that, when I was in college, one of my really good friends, she came up to me and she said, like, Ryan, I'm seeing that you're making all these changes in the gym. I want to go with you, but I'm just afraid that I'm going to put on, so much muscle and then I'm going to get too huge. And I told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse. Now, she had a very heavy purse. I had no idea what was in that thing. I mean, I could have been a dead body. I have no idea. I mean, that thing weighed at least 20 to 30 pounds. And I said, you are lugging that thing around all day. And whenever we go out to eat or, go out to a club or something like that, I mean, you're not getting an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around. And that sort of convinced her. And then, once she went to the gym, she realized that, hey, that's not true. But one of the things that adds on to that question that I love to make as a statement too is that, I mean, this, especially for women, I find impacts them so much more positively than I think it does men. It's just the confidence boost that working out can give you. And I mean, seeing all those changes and just, we've heard so many stories about, especially with the women that we have on our podcast, that, they've been able to make, life-changing decisions or just help them so much with their confidence. And I always say that is the one thing that you can take from the gym and use it to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you personally used that confidence boost that working out can give you and use that to impact all areas of your life?
um, it is really like a mental thing for me, training. So it's a scientific thing. Training will release endorphins, so you do feel awesome when you go to the gym. I like the feeling of being strong when I can like lift a heavier weight than last week. Or so like for me, if I am feeling down, like I will want to go to the gym. I don't find it a struggle, or I don't find that I need to get motivation to go to the gym. In fact, at the moment, I'm injured and I can't train. So it's the opposite. It's like finding the motivation to not go to the gym and being like, oh, um, like forcing myself not to go when I want to because I really can't. But yeah, so that's just it. On a daily basis, it gives me the motivation, and then obviously, from the sense of looking better makes it, quite frankly, does make you feel better. Obviously, let's not like pretend. That's why lots of people want to get in shape and stuff. You do feel more confident, and I have had times in my life when I've been a little bit overweight and a little bit chubby, and um, as soon as you start looking better, you do feel better. I guess just the fact that I really enjoyed the gym so much made me want to be a personal trainer because I just wanted to kind of project that love of the gym and how it helped me mentally and got me into a better place to sort of put that onto others. And it really is the most of the feedback that I get. People they start training with me just because they've got various little goals, whether that's weight loss or just wanting to look a bit better. And they always say after a couple of months just how much better they feel in general in life. Or you have people that come to the sessions and they're not necessarily making loads of progress because maybe they're just coming to your one session a week and not really doing anything else. But it's just coming to that session makes them feel good just for that hour. They've had a long, stressful day at work. Um, Coming to the gym, either it makes you feel good from the endorphin point of view, or it's just that kind of feeling of, yeah, I've gone to gym and you feel good afterwards.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how'd you get injured?
Overtraining. So I did a bodybuilding show, at the beginning of last month, and the feedback was that my upper body wasn't quite there. And then I just kind of went straight into trying to prepare for the next show. And I think as well, just from weeks of being starving and really, really tired, I was super happy to have all this energy again. And I was just honestly, I was training like crazy, like most days. Like usually you have quite a logic to your like training split. Mine was just every day, just training. Oh, I trained shoulder yesterday. Never mind, I'll do it again because I feel like it. And I was just doing really intense, heavy training. I sort of didn't give myself that transition from I've been lifting really light weights to now I can suddenly feel strong enough to lift these big heavy weights again after months of not having done so. And so it's something here. I mean, I haven't had a proper diagnosis yet because it's without a scan, it's quite hard to really. And I've had a few sports massages and chatted to some physiotherapists, but it's in the neck. It's like this chronic pain at the back of my neck, and we're slightly concerned that it's like nerve damage or something, and it kind of runs and it makes this shoulder ache as well. Basically, it just feels like I've got a heavy bag in my hand the whole time, and it aches. So I'm just literally leaving it for until I get a proper diagnosis or until it just heals, which it's only been 2 weeks, but it feels like forever.
Oh yeah.
So
And honestly, I wish you nothing but the best on that. I mean, I hope everything turns out well. But I always love to say, I mean, especially for the bodybuilders that we have on, the number one biggest shock that I would have never guessed in a million years, that is probably the hardest thing for the vast majority of the competitors that we have on, is the posing. I mean, I never would have guessed that in a million years. But now I always like to say, where, I like to compare it to being a perfect driver. Where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
same as my experience with driving. I'm terrible at driving and I don't have a driving license. And posing was honestly that was really the main factor that let me down in my show because I just was awkward in some of my transitions and just basically I actually did it wrong a couple of times and that makes you lose a lot of points. So like because it's all been filmed, I've got loads of people in the audience to film me, like friends that came, and when I watched it back, I was like, oh yeah, um, posing for me was so hard. But to be honest, because I didn't enjoy it, and that's not the aspect that I like as well, especially because it's a bikini category that I was in, and that posing is very quite, flouncy and girly, and I'm not really about that kind. I'm not that kind of
You have to
person.
have like your own sass too, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like forced for me. Like I don't naturally feel that way, And for me, that was the least favorite part of doing like a prep and preparing for a bodybuilding show was having to then also do the posing, and also it's really expensive, like posing classes. And I didn't really like practicing because I just didn't enjoy it. So and there's absolutely no way that I practiced enough. And people say it, and it's true. You need to practice every day. And I just didn't have that motivation to practice, and it really showed on stage that I hadn't practiced enough. So yeah, it's posing is so big, and it's not a waste of time, but it sort of is when you've worked really hard and been starving for months and trained like when you've been exhausted, and then you mess up because your posing wasn't good enough, and that's one of the main reasons that you didn't qualify. It is silly, and I think if you're going to do a bodybuilding competition, you need to treat the posing on an equal par with your training and your nutrition. Otherwise, you just might as well not bother to starve yourself for months and, you know
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I gotta say, probably the best example that we've heard of someone who's lost points that I would have never guessed too, and that a lot of people don't think of, is they weren't smiling enough. The judges said so. They said, you have to be smiling. Yeah. So then they got second place because of that. So I was like, oh my god, that's just so eye opening. But out of the poses that you had to do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Um, well, my favorite one ended up being the side pose, which actually was my least favorite in the beginning because it's so awkward and uncomfortable. You have to twist so that your shoulders are both really clear, make your waist look as small as possible, stick your bum out. You're in high heels, and it the most uncomfortable one, but it was also like the one where I looked the best. So I was like, yeah, I like this one. My least favorite was the back pose because I find it really hard. You've got to bring your lats out, and that for me was really difficult. And that's where I lost points as well. Was just like saying my lats weren't big enough. But quite honestly, a lot of the time with like bodybuilding is it's all about illusions anyway. So like for example, when guys worry that they're not big enough, you can make yourself look bigger with what you're doing with your posing and things. So I didn't really learn properly how to like spread my lats out and make them look bigger, and I still struggle with that. So that was like my least favorite pose, and also the fact that you're in a lat spread where you're pushing your upper body, but you're also sticking your bum out as far as it'll go, and that was and everyone says this after the show, and it's something that I had to deal with. The midsection of your back is in agony the days after. So I'm used to having like upper back pain from like training, like my traps will get sore and stuff. But when you've got mid back pain, it's a problem. And I had to go and get like a sports massage because I was walking around in a lot of pain, and I knew that it was because of those poses. Because you are on stage for quite a while, and my experience of being on stage was just pain, just solid minutes of just utter pain.
Well, that's one thing that I honestly never understood too until I started having bodybuilders on the podcast, is that, like, yeah, you are basically flexed the entire time. So a lot of the times with the bodybuilders, yeah, they've gotten more sore after even some posing sessions than they did for any of their workouts, just because it is a workout in and of itself. But I always say the back pose, if I ever competed, that would probably be my favorite, just because you can let your face down. You don't have to be smiling all the time. You can kind of breathe a little bit and just be like, okay, catch my breath now, get that over with. But now, my favorite question to ask the bodybuilders I have on, because as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, I
Oh, me
have
too.
I have thick, yeah, I got my thick Norwegian skin. Well, I'm also part English too, so I got basically a lot of Scandinavian roots. That's like, I think that's like 80% of my genealogy. But I mean, I go outside in the sunlight and I get just burnt to an absolute crisp. I could put on an SPF of, like 1 million, suntan lotion, and, I still get burnt. I mean, I was at a baseball game the other day, and, I always tell my friends, we got to get tickets in the shade, because I'm not going to be sitting, in direct sunlight. I was in the sun for probably about half an hour, and I'm still peeling off skin right now from that. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But so I've never been tan a day in my life. I get farmer's tan, where, let's be honest, that's not a real tan, but I mean, bodybuilders get tan. What is that feeling, and what is that experience like for you? Because we hear about all these stories of, like, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that like for you?
Amazing. Literally, the one thing about bodybuilding for me was learning that I'd like to be tanned. So I'm also pale most of the time. Exactly everything you just said about the burning and stuff. So I've literally kind of started using fake tan and stuff now, just because it makes me feel more confident. And yeah, when people ask like, why do bodybuilders wear that tan? It literally does make all your muscles come out. So when you're pale, like as I am, it's quite difficult. Like you're doing your check-ins and sending it to your coach and stuff, and unless you've got good lighting, you can't often see stuff. As soon as you put tan on, you can. If you look at a picture of pictures of me like together, one with me like literally the morning before I got my tan, and then it looks so different. It looks like I've been training for 2 years or something and have made some big transformation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating what that does. But now, another thing with the tan, though, that I really love to point out is that, I mean, you basically have to become a statue. You can't really sit against anything. You can't really lean against
Ugh.
anything. I mean, going to the bathroom, especially for women, is a difficulty in and of itself. But
Oh hell yeah.
that just adds on to the dedication and the determination that it takes. When, I mean, that just comes into play. Like, I mean, I just can't imagine that. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be, health and fitness, or my bands, or any other type of guest, for my bands, I always like to ask, what is that feeling like when you get to step on stage and perform live in front of, hundreds to thousands of people? But that also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on. What is that feeling like for you when you get to step on that stage and show off all of that hard work that, like you said, you've worked months upon months on?
Sort of stressful. um Yeah, I think everyone was just backstage like, "Oh my god, oh my god," and I had to be the first one going on as well. But I guess when you're actually on stage, like, you're not thinking about the audience at all. There's just like it's not thinking that there's hundreds of people in front of you. It's just thinking, "I need to get this pose right and everything." And to be honest, I'm looking at the judges because I want to see that they're like watching me and see if they're smiling and see if they're talking to each other. Because the judges will literally just be right in front of the stage because they are like analyzing you. So that's the only worry is like, what are the judges thinking? And then just trying to remember to maybe change your poses up as well. Like a lot of the time, because there's quite a few of you on stage, um, you'll just be stood at the back while someone else is doing their routine, for example. So you don't want to just be stood there and one, A, it hurts to do that, and B, like makes you look a bit boring. You've got a chance to kind of showcase yourself in the best way possible. But yeah, it is just that pressure of I've only got a few minutes here and I've worked my ass off for like many, many months. So it's just straight, you're just in that zone.
When you're on that stage, does time seem to stand still, or does it seem to take forever?
Forever. That's how I felt anyway, because it was just like I said, so painful. I was there like, when's this gonna end? Because when you're stood waiting for everyone else to do the routines, you just stood static, but everything's really, really flexed. Um, so it hurts, and I was just thinking,
Yeah.
when's this gonna be over?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like. But now we go on to a fun question. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Well, um, it was pizza. But the thing is, I stepped off stage, and because he's so overwhelmed by everything, I couldn't decide what I wanted to eat. I was like, I just feel like celebrating. And then um, there's lots of like sort of people on Instagram. I think it's becoming quite a craze now to have these like bakers, and we have one in the UK called the Bikini Baker, and I think most competitors like have heard of her, and they just create these disgustingly amazing creations, and all you can say is like, "Can you make me like a brownie or a tray bake or whatever?" And you choose all your favorite things. So I chose like Oreos and Rocky Roads, and she could literally make like a mountain cake full of like loads of sweets. Do you know, like things that you wouldn't find in a shop? And that's kind of what I wanted. I was like, I can buy like a packet of biscuits whenever, but I want something special that's like specific to like bikini shows or whatever. So it's that funny thing of like wanting like a mountain of cake or something. And that's what I had first anyway. And then I was like, I want savory now, so I went and had pizza.
What's she called? The Bikini Baker?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just leave a link to her stuff down below so that anyone who's interested in that, because we do have a lot of competitors that listen to this podcast too. So the Bikini Baker, yeah, if you're in the UK too, I would definitely go and I would check her out. And yeah, just talking about that, I mean, I'm sorry, starting to drool right now, but I always say if I ever competed, I would go. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have Five Guys in the UK? Five Guys burgers and
Yeah, we
fries?
do actually. I've
Yeah.
never been.
I would take like $1,000 out of my banking account and I would go and I would buy out a Five Guys for the night. And I would just say, here's the thing, you're going to feed me until I either die, puke, or throw or pass out. But either way, I'm getting my money's worth. But yeah, that would definitely be one thing that I would do. But probably the most important question that I love to talk about with all the health and fitness and the bodybuilders that we have on the show is that, I mean, when it comes to your post show, one of the biggest myths that I think so many people have is that, you're just going to be able to look like that all year round. And that's just not true. I mean, some people try to do that, but it's very, very hard for them. But what was that experience like for you when you realized that, like, hey, this is not a sustainable look and I am going to have to put on weight eventually?
Well, I definitely wouldn't use the word eventually. I think it was like that, the weight gain, because you can't literally be that lean. Obviously, it looks good when you see the stage photos, but in reality, I was so underweight. And you can see every single vein popping out of every part of your body, and you're absolutely freezing cold because you've got like no body fat, which is actually just really unpleasant. So you wouldn't want to sustain it for yourself.
You got kind of that skeleton face that I like to always say when people have when they
Yeah,
when they
that
go to show.
diet
Yeah,
face,
yeah.
yeah. None of it's like really healthy when it goes to those last few weeks. So yeah, I mean, it was something that I realized, and I always knew that I was going to just gain weight straight away. But I suppose it's more just dealing with other people's reactions to that, because the people that are sort of ignorant about that will comment on your weight gain and things, and they'll assume that you've been eating loads of crap to like suddenly gain weight like that. But at the end of the day, when you've gone from eating barely anything, like I was on like less than 1,000 calories and doing so much cardio, and when you've gone from that to just eating normally again, your weight gain's going to be instant. Your body is literally going to lap up the extra calories and be like, please, because it's been starving for so long, that it's just going to absolutely be like, yes, finally, she's actually treating me right and feeding me what I'm dying for, what I've been starving for. So the weight gain will just be instant.
We've heard so many stories about people, that might put on, like 30 to 40 pounds in like a couple of days or a week afterward, just because, yeah, like you said, their body is just so wanting to, just add on whatever they can. But I always say it's just like starting your own business. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, those are just two things that really need to go hand in hand. But how long into your journey before you decided that, hey, I want to become a personal trainer? That sounds like something that I'd want to do.
Um, so I guess I had a 4-year course at university, and during that time I was studying something like nothing to do with fitness. So I was never thinking about personal training, but I was just always going to the gym. I was in the athletic society at uni, and it was always a hobby around my uni. So I spent those 4 years enjoying all my training and stuff. And then I guess I went into like a awful graduate job after uni, and that made me realize, God, like I don't have to work with my degree subject. And then for some reason, just like it was like a light bulb moment, that I just decided, what else can I do with my life? Because I quit that job and I was unemployed and panicking, and then I just said, personal training. It just came to me like a light bulb moment. Um, yeah, like why don't I make my hobby into a career and see how it goes? And yeah, that was a couple of years ago now, and it's going all right.
Well, and that's awesome. And I mean, a question that I always love to ask all the personal trainers that we have on the show. I mean, we talked about this before we started recording the podcast, but I mean, is that, so many people, especially with Instagram, I mean, they see all these transformation stories that the clients post. And I mean, great for them. I mean, we see how much it's changed their lives and how positive of an impact that is. But we never really hear what that's like for the personal trainers. because I mean, it's just a lot of it's like it should be focused on the client. But what is that feeling like for you as a personal trainer when you see these changes out of these people that have come to you for help and that you've been able to make such a positive impact on their life? What is that feeling like for you knowing that you have done such a great service to them?
That feeling is like everything. I suppose if I didn't have that feeling, I wouldn't carry on because obviously being a self-employed personal trainer, it's hard at times. Sometimes, people always asking, how do you cope with having a different income every month and things? And yeah, it can be difficult, but that feeling is what keeps me going because it is, and it's just little things that your clients say to you about how how much more confident they feel, or how pleased they are, or little things like, oh, I tried on a pair of jeans that I've had for 2 years and not fitted into. Little comments and the thank yous that you get, and obviously, yeah, you don't post those on social media because, like you said, it's not really about you, and you're not going to go on social media and be like, "Oh, I've absolutely smashed my job." It is the client's journey, and they're the ones you're telling them what to do, but it's up to them to put the work in. They're the ones that have achieved it. But yeah, like obviously from my own perspective, it's so nice to just know, and that's kind of why I wanted to be a personal trainer in the first place. Just to help other people to enjoy the gym the way I do. And when you actually achieve that, and you go with someone who's maybe never stepped into a gym before, or been too nervous to enter the gym, to someone who's happily training on their own and coming like 4 or 5 times a week with a complete confidence to do so, that's so great.
Oh, I mean, and I just can't even imagine what that feels like. And I always tell people, I mean, it's like get a job where you can work with people and you can really help out people, because I mean that really just can add so much joy and happiness and confidence to your life. But now, before we go on to the last part of the podcast, where can people find you if they want to get help? I mean, if we have any people near Leeds or any people in the UK or just anyone at all that might be interested in acquiring your online coaching, where can people find you?
So social medias that I'm on, I've got my Facebook page, I've got my Instagram page, and I've got my YouTube channel as well. So I have my own little YouTube channel, which is nice, and that's just literally if you type in my name into YouTube, it'll probably come up, Emily Bagshaw. And then yeah, my business name is Emily Jane Personal Training. So that's my um that's my Instagram, just Emily Jane dot personal training.
I will honestly leave a link to all that stuff down below. So anyone, if you're
Oh,
interested in that,
okay, that's fine. Yeah. So basically, it's Instagram's kind of where I post all my content and workout videos and client transformations and things. Facebook, you can see my reviews and things like that, like client testimonials. And then YouTube is just kind of more of a vlog style, and obviously I can say more on my YouTube, so I like to be able to have that as well.
I watch a few of her YouTube videos, and yeah, I recommend everyone go and check that out. And like I said, I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. But now, two of my favorite questions that I love to ask for the bodybuilders and the health and fitness guests that we have on. For the first one, I mean, there's been so many positive things that have happened to me. I mean, just from working out and getting into shape. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or like water bottles or anything that's like tight and sealed. I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I finally move out. And just whenever they come home with groceries, I mean, I just basically have to lift the car into the driveway and then carry in the groceries. Has that been a similar experience with you, where now that people know that like you're a bodybuilder and you've been training, that they just assume that you can do favors like that for them?
No, I
Oh,
think
lucky.
that's a gender thing. I think with it being a female, it doesn't matter. Like,
We've had well, we for me, it's I figured it's kind of been like half and half, because like some of like the really muscular women that we've had on, like for them, then they kind of like get asked to, but yeah, I mean that's definitely been. I mean, it really, I think it depends a lot too, but yeah, I always say you're lucky then you get to work out and then you don't have to deal with the like, oh hey,
yeah,
help me.
I mean, I'm quite mini, really. I'm very short. I don't. It's like I use meters in America, don't you? I'm like 1.5 meters.
We
If
use
that makes
feet,
sense.
but yeah, 1.5, yeah, so that's
Oh, you use feet, so I am 5 foot.
5 foot, yeah, yeah, 1.5 meters would be 4 foot 6 inches. Yeah, that would
Oh,
be four
I
and a
don't
half
know
feet.
then. So
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
five
was gonna
foot.
say if she's 4.5 feet, I was like that might be like a record then. Yeah, no. Oh no, I totally yeah. But I always well just because you said that, because I always say the most embarrassed I've ever been on this podcast is that I had a power lifter come on and she was 4'11", so even shorter than you. And out of her bench, her deadlift, and her squat, two of them were bigger than mine. She
Really?
outlifted me in two of those three, even though I have let's see, I had 16 inches on her height wise and about 50 pounds on her too. But yeah, she was just a beast. Yeah, her bench was the only thing that I did more than her. I think I did like 25 more pounds than her. But yeah, her squat, she did outdid me by like 5 pounds, and her deadlift was by like 10. So I was like, okay, I need to go to the gym right now and like break those just so I can say. But yeah, that's, I mean, and that just proves too. I mean, it doesn't really matter how big you are or your height. I mean, if you work hard and do all that stuff, I mean, anything is really possible. But yeah, I always say too, being 6'3", it's a double-edged sword. Where I mean, I even got asked a couple of days ago by a couple of friends, "Hey, you want to come help me move my furniture and stuff?" And I told them, I said, like, I don't want to, but I'll do it because I'll be a good friend. But now the other question that I love to ask is, obviously this is a multi-million-dollar idea, so anyone out there get on it. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, I always say fit guys have their own problems. But when we're talking about fit women, I mean, let's be honest. If you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't going to be your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time. Where I mean, if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that, especially like when you're on prep, I mean, you basically have to have two types of clothes. I mean, your prep clothes and your off-season clothes. But what have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited?
Well, I suppose, to be quite honest, when you're on prep, you don't wear anything but gym gear. Like, I literally went through months of not even wearing any casual clothes or having any. Like I said, most of the time you don't really you're not really socializing because it's pretty hard to socialize on prep when you can't go for meals and you can't go for drinks and most things that in social involve food. So you end up not really going out very much anyway. And I suppose the odd time you do, you just make do. I wouldn't really buy like prep clothes as such. I just wear my gym gear, and they're always, a bit more tight fitting anyway, aren't they? Like the gym leggings and stuff. So pretty much get away with it.
Well, I always gotta say, especially with our UK guests, I mean, Freddie jeans are one thing that's really, really popular. I think over there with a lot of the guests that we've had on. So I don't know if you have any, but yeah, that's one thing that we've heard all the time. So if anyone's looking for something, go look for that. But now, as we wrap things up, we go to our audience favorite and my personal favorite part of the podcast, the little questionnaire where we're going to ask Emily here about a half a dozen or so health and fitness questions and just see how her answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So now for our first question, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Lighter than light mayo.
As the first time that we've heard that lighter than light mayo. I mean, I always gotta say our most shocking answer has been mustard because it's 0 calories, zero in fat. So I mean, a lot of the bodybuilders that we have on, they just like to douse their chicken and their eggs or whatever they're eating just in mustard. But I would way rather have mayo than mustard. I am a huge ketchup guy. I hate mustard. So whenever I heard that, I mean, I almost threw up a little bit in my mouth a little bit. But yeah, mayo. Yeah, I would take that over that any day of the week. But now, what is one thing that you think out of all of your followers that follow you on Instagram, if everyone were to meet you in person, what do you think would be one thing that everyone would be most shocked by?
Probably that I'm actually a really private person. I think people think that they know me better than they do, but what they don't realize is that everything I post is like very specifically. I'll only post if it's fitness related, really, and like they won't really know anything about my personal life. I think people think they know me better than they do.
That's one thing that I've heard too from a lot of people, and that's one thing that I like try to do too, where it's like, yeah, you keep my personal life out of it. And I think that's really important too to help, especially maintain your sanity with this age of social media. Where, yeah, I have a separate account for the podcast. Like I even have like a separate Snapchat for the podcast for my personal one. It's just important to like keep like separate things so that yeah, so like your friends just have your own thing. Yeah, I highly recommend anyone if you're really getting stressed out about social media to just do that because then
I do
it's a
that.
lot more freeing. Yeah, I highly recommend that. But now, what is one thing? I mean, if people were to come up to you and say, Emily, we made a decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh, that's a good question. Loads of like different things are running through my head right now. I think bodybuilding would be great if Instagram didn't exist because then people who really wanted to do it would do it. I think there's so many people out there that literally they're doing a prep so that they can post about it on social media and they're always posting about how they hate it and they're not enjoying it. And if that pressure wasn't there of social media, people that actually enjoy the process would be the ones doing it.
Or the people that do one show just so that they can call themselves like certified or that they can say that like I've done a show, like I know what I'm doing, so then they just do one show and then they just use that to like try to start their own business, which I mean it's fine if you want to do that, but it's like then they parade themselves as like that they know everything just because they did one show. That's another thing too that I would definitely like to see change
Oh,
as well.
absolutely agree. Hate that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, for me personally, one thing that I've heard a lot, and it's sort of convinced me or it's enlightened me into it, is that a lot of times the judges, I mean, they ask for different packages all the time. Where I mean, like you could go do one show and then they're asking for a little bit more leaner of a look, and then you could do the same show the next week, and then they'd be like, "Oh, we want a bit more muscular of a look." I mean, it's just to come up with more of a consensus of what they would like, just so that it can really help out. Because for a lot of these competitors, it's like good luck putting on more muscle in 1 week. I mean, it's like it's just one thing that I really find that is just truly mind-boggling about the sport. But I mean, hey, if they can find a way to make that better, I mean, I would be so on board with that. But now moving on the questionnaire, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Um, God, hard.
I'll go first. I would give myself, well, first of all, I'd tell myself, get this podcast started a little bit earlier, because I got this podcast started when I'm 23. I had my birthday earlier this week. I'm 25, but honestly, I would have said start this earlier, and I mean, just stick with the working out, because that's when I really started, when I was 18. But on that too, I mean, I would pull it back to the future, and I would give myself like stock advice. I'd be like, yeah, invest in Apple, invest in Amazon, a little bit more. I mean, that would do really, really wonders. But what do you think you would like to advise your younger self?
Probably don't blow all my student loan, because I went to uni when I was 18, and then I could have used that money to like really invest more in my business. Because when I started my personal training business, I like started it with no money, and it was like quite hard for a few months, and it would have been nice to have some money to inject into it, into like marketing and stuff. But obviously I had no idea at the time. So I would just say, yeah.
That's one thing I wish I would have done with this podcast too, because like I had no money to like inject into it, or like to even plug it. We're like, hey, come check out this podcast. Where I believe me, like I've been doing this now for 13 months now, and I'm slowly starting now to like slowly catch up and like get a lot of traction. So yeah, I wish I would have done that earlier on as well. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at when it comes to bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at when it comes to your career? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
I would like to think I was still like smashing my personal training business, and like, I would like also to have more of an online client base as well. I like see these trainers that have like managed to sort of make it online, and that would be great. And that's like I'd like my YouTube to take off as well. Again, just so I can reach more people. I just think being online, having an online presence when you're in the fitness industry is so important. And it just means that you can help a lot more people. So I'd kind of like things to have expanded in that way. And in terms of bodybuilding, obviously I would like to win a show. That would be nice. So what I need to do from now until next year is like build more muscle, because I was in like the tiny little category, and all the girls that I was on stage with were so much narrower and smaller than me, and I had these like massive muscly legs on stage, and it just didn't work. And then in order for me to go into the next category, my upper body needs to be bigger so that it can sort of match out to my legs. So bodybuilding wise, that would be it. I'd like to have like a much stacked upper body, and just yeah, hopefully not be in that same smaller category that I was in this time.
Do you have any plans of when you're going to compete next, or are you just sort of waiting to see what happens?
Well, so bodybuilding season ends in October, and so because of my injury, I was gonna do another show in September and then hopefully qualify for finals, but that's out of the water now. So all I can do is wait for myself to, recover, and then I'll be able to. Obviously, people tend to start if you're gonna go for any like shows in May, start prepping in like January. I'd probably not do a May show this time, I think, for next year, because then you've done a show in May and all the finals are in October. So you've got several more months where you've got to kind of maintain a condition, which can be quite difficult. So I think it would be better to start a prep later, for sort of shows that are a bit later in the year. To then, you could do September show as your first show, or August, September time to qualify for the finals. So I probably wouldn't have to worry about prep again for quite a few months for now. So yeah, in the meantime, I can just keep training really hard and go for like the more like the bulking season where yeah, you're going to be a bit, you know, fluffier. I don't know if that's a term you're familiar with,
Oh yeah.
but we say like fluffy.
No, yeah. I
Like you
mean,
were saying, you have to gain weight to gain muscle. So that's what I mean. Just accept being a little bit bigger for like, the next six
absolutely.
months. And
Oh yeah, 100%. It's all about, with your mind too, just being able to accept that, because for so many people, I mean, just the mental aspect is so much harder. But for our final two questions of the podcast, I mean, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, because I told you the nice story where, I mean, I had a guy on from Oxford who had the poshest British accent I've ever heard in my entire life, where I told him, listen, you're just going to talk the entire time and I'm going to listen because you have just the greatest accent. He was the number one sleep specialist on the planet. And we were talking about the importance of sleep and how great it is for recovery. And I mean, for bodybuilding and just for working out too, I mean, that is the most important thing in my opinion when it comes to recovery is getting that proper amount of sleep. But when you're working out so much, I mean, sometimes it can be hard to fall asleep if you're so sore that I mean, it can just be so trying, and especially when you're on a prep because everything's just so scientific, it can be hard to get the right amount of sleep. Was that a struggle for you finding the right amount of sleep to be able to get to still be able to wake up and still have that energy to go and work out again, or was it something that you really had a easier time with?
I actually had an easier time with sleep. I think because you are so exhausted, you need it. And also being so tired helped me with the hunger side of things because for me when I'm um tired takes over hungriness for me. So yeah. But yeah, obviously when people struggle to sleep on prep, it's the worst thing because like you said, it's so important for recovery and also for your weight when you're on prep as well and you sort of constantly weighing yourself to monitor. I'd always my weight would be up if I hadn't slept enough and it could just drop like that. So like I could literally weigh myself at 6 a.m., maybe go back to sleep for another couple of hours, and then wake up at 8 and then my weight had like dropped by half a kilo. And that would be the weight that I'd be putting as my check-in weight. Sleep massively, massively helped with my weight. So yeah, your body's like going to retain everything when your body's exhausted, so you'll weigh more. So yeah, sleep has a massive effect on everything.
It is just so important that I cannot overstate it. But now for our last question of the podcast, I mean, I always love to ask all the, especially the personal trainers. I mean, if someone were to walk up to you in the street and say, like, "Hey, you look amazing. I want to get in shape as well." What is the best piece of advice that you like to give people to just be able to go into the gym? Because for so many people, I find that is the hardest thing. Where I mean, for me, let's be honest, I have a little bit of OCD. Where like if I start a new training program, I have to start it on a Monday because it's the beginning of the week, so I can capitalize on it the most. If I have to work out, like at 6 o'clock at night, if it's 6:01, I gotta wait for it to be like 6:15 or like another round number because that's just how my weird brain works. But like for me, I mean, I try to come up with all the excuses in the book, but I'm one of those people too, and I found this for so many people. Once you take that first step into the gym, it is very hard to not get a workout in before you leave. I mean, that's just for me and for a lot of people. I think that's the thing. But what's the best piece of advice that you like to give people just to have them have that motivation to step into the gym?
Well, I mean, I always just think find exercise that you enjoy doing. So I would never tell someone to necessarily to find motivation to go to the gym if they haven't found the motivation, like maybe they don't enjoy the gym. And then obviously there are other ways to get like healthy and be
Absolutely.
healthy and be in shape and enjoy exercise. So I suppose I wouldn't necessarily like if someone wasn't finding the motivation, I wouldn't necessarily force it upon them. If that makes sense.
Oh
But
yeah.
obviously there's the whole gym anxiety thing that comes into the equation a lot of the time. So I'll have clients and they'll really genuinely want to, but they really can't. I think that's something that is misunderstood a lot of the time as well. Anxiety and things like that. And people genuinely really can't. And that's something obviously that is part of my job to help people get to the stage where they can. But for people that really, really can't go in on their own, they're probably not going to. They're not going on their own. I mean, they're not going to do it. And that's kind of where I come in. But yeah, just small steps really is what I'd say. Or there's other ways to like slowly get yourself into the gym, whether it's like going with a friend or like trying some classes or something. But yeah, I'd never force it upon someone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just meant like that little push where they might just be like, oh, I want to, but like I don't know how to. But yeah, going with a friend, that is a huge thing that I hear of all the time, and I couldn't agree with that more. That really really does help out with that. But now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up, or anything that you'd like to plug?
Um, who would I give a shout out to? Probably like my coach, who's also like my friend from my shows. It's paid Rebecca. She's the one person bodybuilder who is absolutely obsessed with prep and she loves it and she lives and breathes it and she's always on a prep, but she's smashing it at the moment. She's gone to like international level. She's competed in South Africa. She's going to Malta soon and like Barcelona in September. And she's just a fantastic person to follow on Instagram if you are sort of looking into bodybuilding and you want some motivation.
I'll actually send her a message right after I'm done talking to you and see if she wants to come on the podcast. I think she'd be a great guest to have on.
Yeah, she's lovely to talk to.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But again, you guys, Emily Bagshaw, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. And again, I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast again. Like I said, it was so great having you on and sharing your story. And we wish you nothing but the best with your injury. I hope everything really clears up with that. But again, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you to you as well. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.